Teresa Yanaros at Divine Frequency. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Fader Nuts. I know, y'all, it's almost the weekend. We are almost there. One more day. I know you're probably thinking, oh man, my boss assigned me this grueling project due next week. I should be in bed so I could get a head start tomorrow. But you know what? You know what I say to that, guys? Sounds like a problem for future Teresa. You can have that one. That one's free. It's time to party. You guys are tuning into On the Airwaves Radio. The times have changed and the tides have shifted. Let's ride the airwaves. There's a mermaid song for you, y'all. This show is packed with high energy mediatainment live. For those of you who know me, I've got a lot of energy. And nope, that's not the coffee, my friends. That's just me all the time. Got a story for you there. One time I took a flight at 5 o'clock in the morning. I showed up at the airport and the TSA agent told me that she hated me. That happened. That's a true story. Apparently, I'm a little bit too peppy, got a little too much pep in my step for the TSA at 5 o'clock in the morning, but that's okay. We are diving deep into the realms of the world today. I don't know where y'all are listening from tonight. Maybe you're taking a bath. Maybe you're by a nice fire because it's cold outside, or maybe you're on your computer watching Jimmy chill by the bunker cam. I don't know, but we are exploring the farthest reaches of the unknown. We are leaving no ocean unexplored. You can join me on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time for deeper perspectives on a vast array of news media topics from current events to popular culture. If you want to join the conversation as we are flowing in the ether, go to Twitter and live tweet with Divine Frequency using the hashtag DF Airwaves. Today is Thursday, December 13th, 2018. All right, let's dive right in. Hashtag mermaid life. I want to open up with a story. I was at the grocery store yesterday, and there was a woman behind me in line who had the most beautiful wedding ring on, and I'm very social, so of course I had to let her know that I liked her shiny thing. Hashtag mermaid life again, right? And then I saw her nails, and her nails were really pretty, and they had gems on them. And I commented on her nails, and she said, you know what? I've been going to the same nail salon now for a few years, and the girl who she would get her nails done by, she went to the same woman for a long time. And I think this girl was 24, she said, and she was so talented. And this woman kept telling her about how talented she was as a nail artist. And so she helped her actually start her own business. She said that she made some phone calls in the community and got her hooked up with some people so that she could get her own studio. And I was having this conversation with her and the cashier, and we were all women talking about how cool it was to see other community women helping other community women. And you know, it's not just about women helping women, it's about people helping people. And I thought it was incredible that this woman was taking the time out of her day to really work with this younger person that was probably 15, 20 years her junior, to help establish her in the community. And it really just pulled on my heartstrings. It made me so excited to be a part of my community here in Texas, to see how people are really trying to help the younger generations gain clarity. And so it made me think about the concept of clarity. What is clarity? Clarity is the quality of coherence. It's the sharpness of image or sound. And I started asking myself, well, where does clarity come from? You know, when you're younger and you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, you've got a ways to go, right? And then when you're older, you look back on some of your experiences and you can ask yourself, well, what have I gone through that helped me gain clarity? So I actually threw this question out on social media and I got a whole lot of responses. And a lot of them ranged from light, love, cosmic consciousness, a lot of that positive feedback. And then something I was thinking about was clarity is also gained through pain and turmoil and even abuse or darkness, because sometimes when you experience an intense transition period or some kind of dark period, things in your past, they come into sharper focus as they pass further behind you. You know, they say hindsight is 2020, and my sister says sometimes it's more like 2015 or 2010, right? So I think that in some circumstances, in some ways, being conscious in the moment, I know that I talk about that a lot, trying to be aware of your surroundings. Sometimes it only gets you so far, right? Because when you're going through something hard, you're not having the greatest amount of clarity in those moments, which is okay. Sometimes it turns out that it takes some time to actually contextualize what it is you have gone through, and that deep reflection period comes afterwards. So I just wanted to throw this out there. For those of you going through a hard time right now, maybe you're going through a transition, maybe you're trying to figure out what's next for you, like this girl who got help from the community and now she has this nail salon. So it's okay to feel low, though. It's okay to take time to yourself to just be. In our culture, I feel like we push ourselves so hard to be constantly acting and doing. And it's okay to take it easy and give yourself time to process what you're going through. And this helps you learn more about yourself. So I just wanted to drop that story on y'all to start off with. And then I would like to shift and talk about some news items. So Barbara Booth of CNBC reported December 13th, 2018, that researchers are turning bumblebees into live drones. I don't know if you guys have heard of this story, but if you think about it, drones, I don't know if you guys have ever used a drone before, but the batteries are really heavy. The drones are really heavy. They don't really last very long in the air. Sometimes the batteries only last like 20 minutes. They're really fun to use though. If you haven't seen anything about drones, go on YouTube and look for drone racing. You're welcome. You will go down a YouTube rabbit hole. It's really fun to watch those videos. But these researchers have actually created drones the size of insects. So researchers from the University of Washington attached wireless sensors onto the backs of bees. And they're using this for agricultural research. So the bees are going around pollinating, coming back to the hive. And when they come back to the hive, that's when the batteries are recharged on the drone that's on top of the bee. So I was thinking about this. It's very cool. But at the same time, I started wondering about electromagnetic waves because humans are bombarded by electromagnetic waves. I know that I feel better when I'm out in nature and I'm distancing myself from electronics. And so I started wondering, well, if we start to attach sensors to all kinds of flying animals and just animals in general, are we putting all of the living beings on this planet at risk? And so I did a little bit of research on this, and I found on the National Center for Biotechnology Information website, I found a paper called Assessment of the Possible Health Effects of Ground Wave Emergency Network. And the sixth section of the paper was called Effects of Electromagnetic Fields on Organs and Tissues. And this was published by the National Research Council Committee on Assessment of the Possible Health Effects of Ground Wave Emergency Network. And that's GWEN. This was published in 1993. So one of the things that I found here was that the effects that they said, this is from the paper, the effects of RF radiation are unlikely to occur at the power densities and absorbed energies associated with GWEN fields. So that was one thing I found. But then I went to cancer.gov and I looked up about exposure to Wi-Fi. So this is on their website. So this says, in view of the widespread use of Wi-Fi in schools, the UK Health Protection Agency has conducted the largest and most comprehensive measurement studies to assess exposures of children to radio frequency electromagnetic fields from wireless computer networks. This agency concluded that radio frequency exposures were well below recommended maximum levels and that there was no reason why Wi-Fi should not continue to be used in schools and in other places. So that was another article that I found. But then I found a paper published in the American Journal of Epidemiology entitled Residential Exposure to Magnetic Fields and Risk of Canine Lymphoma, authored by John S. Reif, among others. And it discussed residential exposure to magnetic fields and the effects on dogs, which I thought was really interesting. So one thing that I found in this study, this is a quote, Information regarding the dog's activity patterns, residence history, and exposure to potential confounders was obtained by telephone interview. And that made me laugh out loud because I was thinking about dogs being interviewed on the phone. But from the abstract, they indeed presented a correlation between the levels of magnetic fields and the rates of diagnosis of lymphoma in dogs. So this was just base level research that I pulled out. I could go on, but I'm just providing a base level of research here. This is obviously a huge conversation, but either way, I know how I feel when I'm around electronic devices. And it's something to consider when we're pushing for research. Is this a slippery slope, or is there really nothing to worry about? Either way, let's, like I say in these situations, remain vigilant. This is a developing story. Okay, so next, I want to talk about abalone shells. Tara Dugan of San Francisco Chronicle reported on December 13th, 2018, that the California abalone season is sunk until 2021 to give the stressed population time to rebuild. So the California Fish and Game Commission, it's closing down the diving sport of abalone shells for 2 years. And as some of y'all know, in this spiritual community, I see a lot of people with their abalone shells. It's commonly used for smudging or cleansing a space with incense or burning woods or herbs. And now people in California might have to take a step back on the abalone shells. I think this is really interesting. I'd actually love to hear from people who live in California. That sounds very interesting. I would love to learn about the sport of diving for abalone shells. That sounds just so much fun. My mermaid self really, really likes to think about that. So I wanted to kind of pivot. Last week, we were talking about the new moon. So how's everyone's clearing out going? We were talking about letting go in order to open the space up for something new. And if it's all cluttered, the universe can't put anything into a space that doesn't exist. So speaking of letting things go, guys, I have to tell you something. My favorite band, Grimes, they just released a new song on November 29th, 2018 called We Appreciate Power. And I was so disappointed because the song is all about AI overlords and giving up free will. And man, it just really upset me because this is my favorite band. I'm like, why'd you have to go this way? So I actually wanted to read you guys some of the lyrics of this song because it's bad, you guys. So in this song, she says, "What will it take to make you capitulate? I'll evade the human race, putting makeup on my face. Simulation, give me something good. God's creation, so misunderstood. Pray to the divinity, the keeper of the key. One day, everyone will believe." So she's talking about AI here. She says, AI will reward us when it rains. Pledge allegiance to the world's most powerful computer. And then asks, what will it take to make you capitulate? And she says, you're not even alive if you're not backed up on a drive. And the song ends with her saying, submit, submit, submit. And I'm like, really? Why'd you got to go that way, Grimes? Just why? When you think about it, why in the world would you want to upload your consciousness to a computer so you could live forever? I know this is kind of a topic that everybody has different opinions on, but to me, I think about the concept of hell. And I know some people don't believe in hell, but talking about it it sort of sounds synonymous for me when you think about this eternity that just goes on and on and on forever. If your mind is uploaded to a drive and you're just a computer, just sounds like an eternity of sadness. I don't know. I really like being human. I like appreciating the human experience and the divinity that we're having here. And I think there's also a level of appreciation that we have in every moment because we know one day it's going to end. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a morbid thought, but it does make you appreciate the time that you have now. And I also think that when our time on this planet is over, there's still more to come. And I think that maybe for some people, that don't believe that there's something more to come, maybe that would be a motivating factor to make them want to upload themselves onto a computer. You know, when you start thinking about that and you start philosophizing about that, you have to start asking, well, what are the person's belief systems? Why would they even want to do something like that? So then it started making me think about, what responsibility do we have to our content that we're publishing? And the reason why I say this is because Grimes is a content creator who I greatly respect. She's awesome. And then she comes out with this song and I'm thinking, okay, you know, I'm an author and I get it. You know, I went to college. You can't always mistake the author for the narrator, right? There's that concept. But when you're looking at musical artists, I don't know. Can you mistake the narrator or the words in the song for what the artist believes? Maybe, maybe not. But I think there's a level of the information that you're disseminating through music that now goes directly into the subconscious minds of potentially millions of people, depending on how famous you are. So you really have to be careful with the messages that you're seeding into the media. And I want to say thank you guys so much for listening today. I actually wanted to bring Jimmy on because I wanted to ask him a question. Jimmy, are you there?
Yep, I am here.
So I'm not sure if you were just listening, but I was just talking about this song by Grimes on AI, and I wanted to know your perspective on this concept of content creators, and are they responsible to the content? Like, how responsible are they to the content that they're disseminating?
Well, I was listening and they were posting Jimmy's in deep thought, okay, because they were watching me. And I was listening to what you were saying. And before I get to that point, the other about submitting to AI and your comments about immortality, right? Well, and I've talked about this concept a lot, and I've thrown this out to so many different minds out there. Would you do it? Would you do it? And I go back and I think about the movie Tron, where you're downloaded onto a chip. In the original movie, the remake was okay too as well, but in the original movie, and the concept of that, now you have no dying cells, right? You are literally just electricity, and your mind is there, and it's you and your memories and everything else, and you are there. And what it starts to get really complex, right? When you start to think about the philosophy side of this. Then there is the flip side. Now you have the opportunity and access to learn like forever. You would have the freedom to learn and become this entity of knowledge, right? Now let's back off of that for a second. When you are living through life, and certainly somebody that may be even successful and that is smart and that is running a corporation, and you are at your end of days and you've maybe answered some of the questions about life and you've got all of this knowledge, you're not necessarily ready to pull the plug. And for somebody like them to continue life's journey and continue to acquire knowledge and share your knowledge, that some aren't ready for that. And maybe the continuation of life and what happens after you leave this version of yourself, that is there, but for them it may not be. And so if they could continue and upload themselves onto a hard drive and preserve what they have learned and continue to acquire knowledge and share that and make decisions, right?
It just kind of seems like lack of trust in the natural order to me.
Well, it's a total break in the natural order of things. Nature has definitely made sure that she has got this thing figured out. Okay, there's no doubt about that. And we could bring in all kinds of, again, philosophical issues here, like GMOs or DNA or CRISPR and changing and altering our children. You know, should we be doing these kinds of things? Well, okay, I understand. It's a very complex situation. But the one thing that we cannot stop is we can't stop Silicon Valley, and we can't stop DARPA or Sandia National Labs or any
Can't
of
we
these.
though?
They are in pursuit of connecting our brains to computers. That's it. That's the number one thing that they are working on right now. And they're not going to stop.
But there should be balance, voices of reason on both sides, and it should be a conversation, I think.
Sure. And so do we have the mortality police, right? Where you cannot live forever. And if you do, if we do pursue this, now we have to implement some kind of law, something to come in place to control this technology and who gets to live forever and who doesn't. And can you imagine somebody running for political office that is living on a USB drive? Right?
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah. And that's why it's so important, I think, to have someone like Grimes who's disseminating this kind of content, having these conversations, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the power of that, the very idea of somebody like Grimes or anybody else that has a very strong influence on our youth, and to suggest these things, it's a power. It's a real power, and to cause people to sit back and go, wow, maybe we should submit to the AI because so and so says so. That's a lot of power to be wielding.
Absolutely.
And who does Grimes consult with? Does Grimes sit down with, somebody from Tibet, to discuss the implications of these kinds of statements and conversations?
It's a great question, Jimmy.
I don't know. And should we, or are we interfering with free will at that point? Right.
Right.
And freedom of speech, for that matter, free will and the basic fabric of what we hold dear, like freedom of speech.
Yeah, there's freedom of speech, and then there's a responsibility to the speech, I think.
Well, see what you're doing right now. You have the freedom of speech to speak up and voice your opinion about Grimes.
That's right.
Okay. All right. That's an equal thing, right?
Yep.
So if we interfere with that, then you have to be interfered with too. It can't be one way, right?
I think what I meant by, well, yeah, absolutely. I think what I meant by responsibility is that each of us, we have a responsibility to our voice, and we need to make sure that we're vetting our information and making sure that we're being thoughtful about what it is that we want to disseminate, because there is power in a voice, and it goes into people's minds, and then they're able to ascertain what wisdom they want to gain from that. And so I think when it comes to musicians, really, really popular musicians that have millions of people in their reach, it's really important. And not just on that side, I agree with you. It's important on all sides for everyone. But it's an interesting concept to take somebody like Grimes and consider the implications of a song like this.
Yeah, and and especially when it comes to AI, I think that we are all concerned. And when I hear the developers that are working on different AI programs, and I listen to a lot of them, argue on both sides of the fence. One is saying, "Oh man, it's so simple. It's not that complex, and we are, hundreds of years away from even coming close to the human brain, and we may never achieve it." And then I've got other researchers and engineers in AI that are going, you know what, man, we got this figured out right now. So I don't know who to believe, but they are all pursuing it. They are all working on it. That
compartmentalization.
Oh man, that neural interface and AI and communication and everything else, that is that right now, that is the holy grail.
I just want a portal gun. I just want to be able to shoot a gun at the wall, and then there's a portal, and then I can go wherever I want.
I've got one.
What?
Yeah, of course I have one. Of course I do. Thank you so much, Teresa. Fantastic conversation tonight.
Thank you, Jimmy. Have a wonderful night.
And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Teresa Yanaros.